So today we have got a coach in for you to talk all about this month's topic, which is consistency. So this is Jamie. Welcome to my membership group. So I'm going to be asking Jamie some questions on his thoughts on consistency. But first off, Jamie, just give my clients a little bit of an overview of who you are and what you do.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everyone. My name's Jamie Knight. I'm a PT and a fat loss coach down on the sunny south coast near Bournemouth. I've been in the industry since 2014, so about 8 years now, and I predominantly train women and men, sort of age range somewhere between 25 and 45. My main niche is in fat loss. I'm also looking into the market of getting brides, bridesmaids, grooms, wedding ready, okay, because obviously it's your big day, you want to look your best. And we just take basically your training, nutrition and mindset, and we look at where you're probably not working to your optimum, and seeing what sort of little tweaks, little habit changes that we can introduce to your daily routines that makes it a nice, healthy, balanced lifestyle, really, and make you as confident as possible. So that's
and I think getting married is like the biggest goal that people can set. And you know, a lot of people fear of not getting to that goal for their wedding day. So I bet you get a lot of people with, you know, like that is a huge goal. And we've just done goal setting in September. And obviously people need goals to kind of work towards. So then obviously October is now all about consistency. And in my opinion, it's kind of the biggest reason that people don't reach their goal. It's not because they don't want it. It's not because they don't know where they're going to, or they've not set a goal. It's just purely down to consistency. So what is consistency to you? What would you say that was?
Consistency is basically, for me, doing the things that you need to do when you don't want to do them. That's when consistency comes into its own. So whenever we sort of start on a diet or start on a new fitness journey, where is probably at its highest. But what happens with our motivation through years and through life is our motivation will kind of come like this. So we'll be motivated. Shortly afterwards, it's only a temporary thing. Our motivation will actually drop. Okay. And this is where consistency and discipline needs to take over. And so it's like a quote that I always live by: motivation is doing the things when we want to do them, but consistency and discipline is doing the things when we don't want to do them. Yeah. So and what happens is people don't tend to see that trigger, which is pretty much normal. We're not really designed to spot this trigger, but it's about establishing when our motivation is dropping, give ourselves a pep talk when we're not fancying going to the gym, or we're not, you know, we're craving rubbish food or whatever. It's just giving ourselves that little self pep talk just to say, come on, let's get through this. We'll feel loads better afterwards. And that's like I tell my clients, like, you might wake up and not fancy going to the gym, but if you go to the gym now, I guarantee that you will feel better than if you actually just stayed in bed.
Yeah, so definitely.
Is just
so obviously we all go through these dips and troughs of obviously motivation. I think if I had £1 for every time someone asked me about motivation, I'd be a millionaire. So obviously we know motivation's not always there. So this is where we need to kind of dig deep. So what kind of tips would you give people when motivation's low, but they're still wanting to hit that consistency?
First and foremost is remember your why. Remember why you started on this journey in the first place, whether it's to shed a few inches from the waistline, you know, get into those clothes that are a little bit too tight. Just remember why you're doing this. Then I just want you just to try and go back to a previous time when you weren't feeling motivated, but you did the job anyway, and how good that made you feel. So it's about kind of anchoring in past feelings, past, you know, emotions or whatever. Plenty of times where I've just not fancied. I've been at work, I've been in the gym, and I've had the whole gym to myself, and I've not been motivated to train, and I've had time on my hands. But you know, like, the one thing you've got to remember is doing a semi-good training session or an average training session is better than doing no training session at all.
Yeah.
And the same thing is with your food choices. And even now we're getting into a society where like we're spending so much time on our phones at the moment, on social media, scrolling through. Having the discipline, having that little pep talk to actually put the phone down and pick up a book or do a hobby instead, it makes so much of a difference.
Yeah, and I think remembering your why and your reasons that you're doing things like is going to be key. Like when you sat on the sofa and you look at your watch and you're like, oh, I've still got 5,000 steps to do, you know, remembering the reason why you want to get those steps in, which is why it's so important to set goals. Like I dieted from January to August because I was going on holiday in August. Now that was a massive why for me. And the reason that I lost 18 pounds, because every time in January, February, March, when it was cold, when I didn't want to do something, I was like, oh, but how are you going to feel in August if you go on holiday? Like, how are you going to feel? And as much as it's hard to always remember that, it's just about those little triggers throughout your day that you can kind of put in there. And I always say to clients about setting reminders on the phone, or, you know, having something on a screensaver written down somewhere to kind of remember your why. So if we're going through our weight loss journey, you know, we're ticking all the boxes, and then all of a sudden something happens, completely throws us off track, whether that's someone's ill, you're ill, you know, you've been on holiday, and you feel like you failed at this consistency. Like, how can you kind of get back on track if you feel like you was being consistent and then something happened, you're no longer consistent, and you're feeling like you failed now because consistency stopped?
I think the key word in there is failed, because too many people are afraid of failing when actual you should.
And it's a big word, isn't it? And a lot of people use it, and it's like,
you know,
like they failed, it's a failure.
We see it all the time. People are deemed failures or something for one reason or another, but actually, is it failing if you're learning from it?
Yeah.
So I tell a lot of people around me that don't be afraid to fail. Actually embrace failure, because that's a great opportunity to learn from it. Now, nobody's life is perfect. We're always going to have that bad patch. We're going to have that thing that comes up that throws us way off of course. And sometimes I think the path with least resistance is probably the wrong path to be on, because if there's no obstacles getting in the way, then we're not going to learn anything. Now, if we're on the path where there's obstacles being thrown at us, that gives us the opportunity to learn how to deal with certain situations, falling off track. It's a case of, again, recognize it, acknowledge it, own it, deal with it, forget about it. We look to now, and we look to the next stage. So it's a case of just picking ourselves back up, dusting ourselves off. Now, the chances are, depending on where you are on your fat loss journey, is your weight was probably starting here, and currently you're about here. So at worst, you've probably come up to about here again anyway, if you've had a bad weeks or a bad month. So you're still in a lot better position from when you first started. Just dusting yourself off, like I say, and just getting back on track, reset, go again. Stop.
It's that word that everyone used during the pandemic, pivot.
Pivot, yes.
And you know what, right? I think that's probably like a great example of things not going right. You know, all of a sudden businesses were closed. People had to do things differently, and they were forced to do things differently, and they were forced to pivot in a different direction or adapt or change. And yes, obviously that was an awful thing that everyone went through. However, it's kind of a good example of your dieting. Like, you know, we didn't all just give up and go, oh, everything's shut, let's just like forget about it. And I think that's what people kind of do on the dieting journey. They get to that hurdle, or they get to that point, and then they just give everything up, and, you know, they just go back to their old ways. And that consistency of just pivoting and changing and adapting is obviously what ultimately is going to get you to your goal. So we've covered it a little bit, but what would you say to people that are continually trying to rely on motivation, or continually wanting to be motivated to do absolutely everything to get to their goal? And obviously we're not motivated 24/7.
Okay, first step I'd say is remember, if nothing else, that motivation is only temporary. Okay, so like I said earlier, is when that motivation starts to dip, that's when we need the discipline and the consistency on. Second tip is don't try and change everything all at the same time. Okay, take one thing at a time. So whether it's your habits, whether it's your eating routine, whether it's your workout routine, don't try and change it all at one time. What we've got a tendency to do is we go from one end of the spectrum to the other. So we'll go like in a really bad diet, bad exercise plan or whatever, or no exercise. And then we'll try and change everything and try and go to salads, running continuously on treadmill, you know, and 9 times out of 10 people will pick exercises that they don't particularly enjoy anyway, but they feel as though they have to do these exercises. You'll see it early January when suddenly all the treadmills are filled up with people in the mornings. A lot of them don't want to be there. A lot of them don't want to be doing the treadmill. So my advice there would be pick an activity that you enjoy, and that doesn't necessarily have to be the gym. If you enjoy,
and that's massive. And I say that all the time, you know, if you're doing something that you don't like, how long are you going to do that for? You know, it's got an end date. There's going to be a day where you can't be bothered, you don't want to do it, and then it just stops becoming something that you do. And like you say, to be consistent, it's important to pick food you like to eat, exercise you like to do, you know, tasks that you're doing throughout your day. You know, it's got to be good. And work as well. You know, if you don't enjoy your work, are you ever going to want to go to work? No, there's going to be no motivation. So it's all the same. You know, you've got to enjoy what you do, whether that diet, training, nutrition, or else you're just not going to do it for a long time.
Yeah, the chances are we're going to need to do it for a while. So it's vital.
Forever. Forever.
And then try and incorporate that part of your identity. So a typical example is like take 2 people that are trying to quit smoking and you offer them both a cigarette, and one says, no, thank you, I'm trying to quit, which, okay, is great, but it's not necessarily the right mindset. The second person you offer the cigarette to says, no, I'm not a smoker. So having that mindset about your own identity, your own values. So instead of, no, I'm trying to lose weight, be, no, I'm somebody that eats a balanced diet and I'm pretty active.
And this is going off on a little bit of a tangent, but I feel it's important, you know. And at work, you know, trying to be consistent at work, and people are going, oh, it's someone's birthday, have a piece of cake, you know, or like someone told me they got offered a Quality Street on their check-in last week. Quality Street. I'm like, is it Christmas already? I thought we were still in September, you know. So it's just like already the chocolates are coming out. So I'm going to be covering about managing December when we get to December, and obviously all the Christmas parties and stuff. But what kind of tip would you give someone at work who is constantly being offered chocolate, sweets, whatever it might be? Just going off that cigarette analogy.
Don't be afraid of it. It's the first thing. Like, don't be the one that like goes in and has 2 or 3 or 4 pieces of cake. Have 1 piece of cake and then just kind of manage that into your calorie budget. Even if it takes you over for that day by a couple of 100 calories, just rein it in the next day. We're not here to adhere to a strict diet, like in terms of if you go over your calories, that's it, it's all over.
Everyone knows I love a bit of cake.
It's all about, you know, we want to enjoy our life as well and not feel restrictive, and again, not feel left out because we're the only one in the office that can't have the cake. And then looking at that cake, we'll be eyeing that cake up all day.
And I think that's another thing that people feel, that they've not been consistent then, and they've thrown them off the goals. And back to what I said about being a failure, you know, people will then go, oh, I've had that cake, oh, I failed. And again, you know, fail's a big word. You know, it's just, I like to use the word optimal. You know, it's less optimal for your diet, because I think is this optimal or is it not? You know, it's a really kind of good word that I like to use with clients. And, you know, having a bit of cake doesn't make you a failure. Like you said, you might have slightly gone over your calories, but you still enjoyed it. You've not restricted, because a lot of people struggle with restriction. And again, like I say, don't have 2 to 3 pieces.
Consistency isn't about being 100% conformative. It's, for me, I think like you say, the optimal position is to be like about an 80-20. Where, you know, you're conforming for 80% of the time, but 20% enjoy it, you know. Percent's quite a big percentage, really, when you look at it.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like, people feel that consistency is 100% all the time, and it's not. Like, the more consistent you are, great. You know, even if you were 60% consistent, you know, it's more than half. Yes, we want to strive to be like 80% consistent, but again, I think people think, oh, that takeaway, that pizza, that piece of cake, you know, I've not been consistent. Well, if you work it out over the last week, over the last couple of months or whatever, you know, how many occasions have you not been consistent? And if it's a handful, then you're probably sitting within that 80 to 20 rule. And like you say, you know, 80% consistency will still get you to your goal. It's not about being 100% consistent all the time.
Exactly.
Because we just can't be at all. So that was great, and I'm sure my clients have got a lot of insight out of that. Is there anything else that you want to add to the world of consistency or motivation or discipline? They all kind of tie in.
Don't be afraid of it. You know, like I say, going back to the failing, don't be afraid to fail. Don't beat yourself up if you've had that cake. You know, you kind of just work around it. And like you said, having that sort of 80-20 or even 60-40 consistency is going to get you to your goal, just not right now, but nothing will. So it's going to take time. And it's about sort of, you know, just kind of adjusting your identity so that, you know, for the rest of your life, you can actually, you know, like sort of the boundaries that you need to be sat in for different goals. So if you do,
and know that one day off track, like I'd rather call it off track than off plan. You know, one day off track from where you should be is not going to make a massive difference. And I think it's that changing mindset that will eventually get you to your goal. By just switching of, oh, I failed because I've had a takeaway. It's like, oh, it's just one day. Just get back to it the next day.
Stop, reset, go again.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. What a great way to end. So for any of my clients that want to find you on social media, what is your Instagram or Facebook?
So Instagram is Jamie Knight _PT, and my Facebook, you can find me at JLK Fitness.
Amazing. Okay, well, thanks very much for joining me today. If my clients have got any questions, I will send them your way.
Lovely. Excellent. Thank you very much.